If you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur, I'm going to show you how to accelerate your influence, your income, and your impact. If you look around the internet right now, it is no secret that there are more businesses, more opportunities, more everything than there ever been in the history of the world. Like, there's so many people on the internet that's making like all of these just crazy claims and bogus claims. And some people, believe it or not, they're actually doing it. Other people, they're just trying to get clickbait, how to make, $1 million in a minute. Unless you are solving like $1 million a minute type of problem, the odds of me and you or anybody else doing that is actually slim to none. However, we're all intrigued by how somebody else does it. And then when you click, they're trying to sell you a recipe for a cookbook, then you're just frustrated. And so what it does is it makes us naturally question when we see things like that. So even when somebody has something even remotely close, and maybe what they're talking about is actually true, people just don't believe it. Like, for instance, like I've made 6 figures in a day. For me to like have some kind of title or headline and talk about how you could do the same, or even let me show you how I did it. A lot of people are skeptical about that because they're like, that's not even possible, because they haven't done it before, and or because of what they seen that was closely related to something in that same title. So we do have to be mindful of that, and it does make it a little bit challenging. But the one thing that actually cuts through all of that noise is a story. Now, before you click off, hear me out here. Think about it. Your story distinguishes you from everybody else. Like, nobody has your story. Nobody has had your experience. Think about this. Tony Robbins, for instance, he is one of the most popular people in the world. Nobody has his kind of story of them not being able to afford dinner or groceries for Thanksgiving, and somebody came to the door to give them food, but his dad refused because he didn't want to make somebody feel like they were receiving a handout. That experience for him, like, that's what caused him to now feed more than 4 million people every single year. Nobody has that same story. Now, sure, has other people, not had food on Thanksgiving? Of course they had. But because of how he has shared his story and has put his father in it, and because of that pain, it now has become a passion of his to make sure that other people don't have the same experience specifically that he's had around that specific time. Nobody else has that story. If you're familiar with Myron Golden, nobody has a story about, him contracting polio, and he was in a segregated hospital, and, it could have been avoided, but because it was, a racial situation, and now you see him walking around with a brace on his leg, but he sees it as a gift because it slows down everything else in his body for his mind to speed up. Nobody else has that story. And so when you think about, him, Tony Robbins, and other people, like, nobody, you want to learn a powerful, proven storytelling system that sells high ticket offers and gives you freedom, finances, and fulfillment. I want to invite you to this upcoming training that I'm doing to truly walk you through the exact same process that I've used to make over 6 figures in one day. I know that might sound a little bit, unrealistic, or it might sound small because you've heard somebody that did a lot bigger. However, I'm not promising that you could do the same thing, but I am promising to show you the step-by-step system that you can use to share your own story. And you can sell high ticket as well. But if you have any interest at all, click in the link in the description. I look forward to seeing you on the training. Now back to the video. It has my story. To say that they failed the 3rd grade almost twice, was labeled dyslexic, and was born to teen parents. And because of that experience, they were, somebody who was ashamed of telling their story. They were ashamed of being seen because they didn't want people to find out that they couldn't read. Like, nobody else has my story. And so when I've shared my story on stage, there are certain people that have more credibility than me. But when they walked away from the conference, this person shared great information, but everybody forgot the information, but they connected with the story because it's mine. And your story is very powerful to your people. And sometimes, and I had to learn this the hard way, sometimes we avoid sharing our story because we think it's going to make us look a certain way. We think it's going to cause us to lose credibility. We think that people are going to talk about us or make fun of us, And for me, I didn't want to share my story because years ago, I thought if people knew my story, they wouldn't want to do business with me. That was the very thing that caused me to connect with certain people that I otherwise would have connected with. And your story as an entrepreneur or business owner, it can do the exact same thing for your people. Because when people think about whatever your story is, they're going to think about you in that specific situation like they're not going to think of anybody else. And other people, they might have more credibility, more customers, more whatever. But the thing about us as people with problems and issues, because we all have them, is that before we allow somebody to enter into the space where they know our business and they're trying to help us, we want to know fundamentally, even if we don't ask the question out loud, we want to know this one question. How do you know what it's like to be me? How do you know what it's like to be me? And people answer that specific question without it ever being asked through their story. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, when you share your story, you allow your people to understand that he knows or she knows exactly what it's like to be me. And so what does that do? When you can allow somebody to understand that you know exactly what it's like to be them, now they automatically default to giving you influence. And when somebody automatically defaults to giving you influence, they trust you in a way that they don't trust everybody else. And this is why stories are so important, because it gives you an unfair advantage to the people specifically that you're called and purposed and you're meant to serve. Now, you're not going to have that influence over everybody, and you don't want to. But for the people specifically that you can help, the people that can identify with you, the people that you can identify with, it's going to give you a level of influence that's unparalleled to anybody else. And here's something else that I want you to consider. Whether we like the same kind of music or the same kind of movies, it's irrelevant. The one thing that I think we can all agree on is that we've watched certain movies and they have moved our emotions. Like they have caused us to do certain things that we normally wouldn't have done without seeing what we saw in that movie. Or we hear certain songs and those songs cause us to feel a certain way. You know, for me, I remember a movie that I saw at least about 6 years ago that's had one of the greatest impacts on my life is a movie called In Time with Justin Timberlake. And people are working and they're not getting paid with money. They're getting paid with time. And I never forget, it was a son and it was a mom, and they were supposed to meet up with each other. And at the beginning of the day, they agreed they were going to meet up with each other after work. And I remember questioning if they were going to make it. And I saw the son, he got to the spot where he was supposed to meet his mom. And granted, now he's not like a little kid, he's probably about 20 years old. And I just remember it showing the mom, and she only had like 5 minutes left on her time. And if you've never seen the movie, when people run out of time, then they die. And it shows that this mom, she has like 5 minutes left, period, to her life. And that's equated to like how a lot of poor people, this is all they have to their name. They might have $3, $5, $6, $7 to their name. So this lady, she only had 5 minutes left to her name on her clock. And so it shows her getting off the bus. Now her son, he has a little bit more time. And so if he could just get to his mom, they can put their arms together and he can give her more time. But it shows her getting off this bus and she only has like 20 seconds left. And she's running to her son and he's running to her. And it's like all of a sudden, it just turns black for a minute and you question, like, did he get there in time? Did she get there in time? And then it shows a scene where they are literally like 20 feet apart from each other, very, very close. And all of a sudden you just see her fall. And he runs to her. He finally gets to her. He's like, Mom, Mom, Mom. And he looks at her arm and it says 0. And he's suddenly trying to like put his arm in to give her more time, but it's too late. She already died because she ran out of time. And that movie has had the most impact on my life because it caused me to see time in a totally different way than I looked at it before. Like, you go to a funeral and we're all sad and, thinking about things we could have done differently. And then you hear people say tomorrow's not promised. That movie for me, that literally showed me and I experienced that time is not promised by way of what I saw in that movie. And that has caused me to just do things that I just wasn't doing before, and it caused me to protect my time like I wasn't protecting it before. And it also caused me to value people that I love a lot more than I valued them before. Yes, I loved them, but I wasn't valuing them by giving them specific amounts of my time and doing things that, listen, if today was the last day of my life, would I do what I'm doing or would I not do what I'm not doing? And so that movie just had a great impact on my life. Why do I even talk about that? Because it's all about a story. Like movies, songs, they're all stories. And they move people just like they've moved you and they move me. And guess what? Our stories can also move people. And so when you move somebody, sometimes just like this movie that I saw almost 7 years ago, I can still vividly remember almost all of the details on what really changed for me. And there's people where when they hear your story, something inside of them is going to click. You're going to activate something in them that's just going to click. And it's like when it clicks, they're now going to associate you with that change. And they're going to remember that moment for a long time, if not forever. And so I strongly encourage you that if you are an entrepreneur or if you are a small business owner, use your story to connect and influence people. And it's like once you do that and you're really trying to serve them, you're going to accelerate your influence, your income, and your impact almost overnight, even though it's not overnight, because it took you a lifetime for you to live the story that you're going to share with them. And they understand that, and that's why they're going to appreciate it and connect to it on a level that's deeper than anything else. Listen, if you are here for the first time, I want to ask you to consider subscribing. And if you are someone who enjoyed this video or you know somebody else who needs to hear this, I would encourage you and I would ask you to share this with at least 3 people that you feel can actually benefit from hearing what you just heard. And until then, I look forward to seeing you on the next video.